What's up, NBA fans? Welcome into NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jimmy Crowther, and today I'm breaking down 5 teams that could look to trade their first-round pick in the 2020 NBA Draft. Now, the first team I'm starting off with is a pretty obvious one, the Golden State Warriors. They landed that second overall pick in the draft lottery, but there's a lot of chatter about what they're actually going to look to do with it. Are they going to look to draft a James Wiseman, an Onyeka Okongwu, a LaMelo Ball, or are they going to package that trade and try to land an established veteran that can help them win an NBA championship next year? Now, that's my expectation. I don't think they're going to use that pick on an actual player. I think they're going to flip it in a trade. And I actually did a video pretty recently on this channel about some blockbuster deals the Warriors could pull off with that number 2 pick. But there have been some names that have been tied to the Warriors that are a little bit more realistic. Not so blockbustery, more Netflixy. How about that? And these hypothetical guys have been linked to the team. Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal, that'd be a blockbuster trade. And we'll talk about what that might look like here in just a second. But Aaron Gordon, LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Love, Steven Adams, all very realistic big men and still relatively big names that the Warriors could use that number 2 pick to flip and land via trade. But FanSided put this one out. So this is the trade I wanted to talk about on today's show. A potential deal that would put Bradley Beal in Golden State. Bradley Beal goes to the Warriors. The Wizards, on the other hand, get Andrew Wiggins, Eric Pascal, who had a great rookie season in Golden State, the second overall pick this year, and then a first-round pick in 2022 that would be lottery protected. Now, assuming the Warriors are going to be good, that pick probably would convey because they're probably not going to land in the lottery once again. But, I mean, that feels like a lot to give up for Bradley Beal. I know Bradley Beal's a great player, but Wiggins is scoring 20-plus points per game. Pascal was putting up 15-plus points per game on a regular basis with the Warriors. The number 2 pick could land you a guy like Onyeka Okongwu or LaMelo Ball. And then a lottery pick in 2022, that's pretty darn good as well. But let's say they pull it off. Let's say the Wizards say, absolutely. And Golden State is like, you know what? We'll take Bradley Beal. We'll get another shooter. We'll get a 30-plus point per game kind of guy on our team. I think you put him immediately in the backcourt with Steph Curry. You go small, you run Klay Thompson at the 3, you run Draymond at the 4, as everyone expects, and Kevon Looney is your starting center, and in all honesty, I could probably play center on this team. If you have those guys out on the floor, you could put anyone in at the center position, and you would win a ton of games. Now, Bradley Beal's the guy that FanSided says the Warriors should trade the number 2 pick for, but assuming they are looking to trade it, and assuming you're in the camp that, the Warriors should probably trade that for an established player, who would you use that number 2 pick to trade for? Let me know in the comment section. You can get as wild and as crazy as you want because there's a lot of good names that the Warriors could make a deal for. Another team that I would expect to trade their first-round pick, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 picks in this year's draft, and 3 of those 4 are inside the first round, number 14, number 26, and number 30. I highly doubt they use all 4 picks on players that they're going to keep. In fact, I highly doubt they use all 4 picks on players at all. Now, last year they proved me wrong, and they still used all 4 picks. They drafted Romeo Langford at the end of the draft lottery. They drafted Grant Williams. They drafted Carson Edwards and Tremont Waters, all guys that actually played somewhat meaningful minutes for the Celtics at different times throughout this year. Now, the Celtics, again, have the end of the pick lottery at number 14. That is coming over from Memphis. So I decided to dig back in the draft archives and look at what that 14th pick has done in the past. Well, just last year, Celtics had it again, and they drafted Romeo Langford. But before that, there was Michael Porter Jr. and Bam Adebayo, 2 guys who really back-to-back drafts were home run picks. Adebayo a steal at 14. Michael Porter Jr., assuming he stays healthy, will be a regular starter on that Nuggets team. But before that, they had Denzel Valentine, who was super meh, and Cameron Payne was drafted by the Thunder. So if history is to repeat itself, you have 2 bad picks back-to-back in 2015-2016. 2 good picks back-to-back in 2017-2018, and then 1 bad-ish mediocre pick in 2019. Celtics should look to trade it if they think history is going to repeat itself. Plus, they've got a solid starting 5. They don't need to hit on the number 14 pick. They don't need it to be a home run because they've already got Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown. Gordon Hayward's going to be a free agent, but I expect him back. Daniel Tice and Jayson Tatum, all guys that really, you don't need to add another rookie in that lineup. But let's say they keep it. We can play the hypothetical here. Guys that I expect to be available around that 14th pick, Devin Vassell, a guy that any team would be lucky to have, but I think he's gone before 14. Same with Patrick Williams. Tyrese Maxey could make a lot of sense as a backup guard, but they just drafted Carson Edwards. Kira Lewis Jr., same boat there, and maybe they want to get a project. Maybe they want a guy that they can take their time on. Alexei Pokazevsky out of Serbia could definitely fit that bill, but I just don't think Boston's going to use all 4 picks. There is no reason to. I think they're going to package all those picks and try to bolster their bench, bolster their depth, maybe go out and get a true center, because right now they have Daniel Tice, Enes Kanter, Robert Williams, no guys that really, if they are a championship contending team, you want in that starting 5. So what do you think the Celtics should do with that first-round pick? Type K if you think they should keep it, or type T if you think they should trade at least one of those 3 first-round picks. Now, one team that is notorious for trading or just using a draft and stash kind of guy with their first-round pick is the Dallas Mavericks. Everybody knows Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson love to build through trades. They love to build through free agency, and it's already been widely reported that they're looking to shop that 18th overall pick. So they have a pretty decent pick. I mean, 18th overall in most drafts would be pretty strong. However, in this draft, it's not that great. However, I think there's a lot of Mavs fans that don't want the Mavs to trade that pick. And again, this video is not, do I want them to? It's, do I expect them to? And I truly do expect the Mavs to trade that first-round pick. But the reason that a lot of Mavs fans don't want them to trade it is because there's guys like this that could be available and could help this team win right now. Now, going back to Alexei Pokazevsky, we know the Dallas Mavericks love to draft European and overseas kind of players, and he very much fits that bill. Sadiq Bey out of Villanova, I don't think he's going to be available at 18, but good Lord, that would be a home run pick for the Dallas Mavericks. Aaron Nesmith, if the Mavs want more shooting, that is what Nesmith does. He shot the ball at over 52% from 3 in his 1 year at Vanderbilt. Josh Green's a good elite athlete out of Arizona and a good shooter. And then Jamias Ramsey, a DFW native, a guy who I think will be available closer to the end of the first round, but I actually have about a late teens, early 20s kind of grade on him. But let's say they look to trade a pick. This is something that Dalton Trigg of Sports Illustrated actually threw out there on Twitter. It's floating around. I'll probably do a whole video on this, but I wanted to at least mention it here. Assuming Tim Hardaway Jr. opts into his $18 million player option, the Mavs could look to package Tim Hardaway Jr., one of DeLon Wright or Justin Jackson. I'd expect it to be DeLon Wright because the Kings have already had Justin Jackson. And then Dalton Trigg actually said the 31st overall pick instead of the 18th overall pick for Buddy Hield. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up here is because, I'm sorry, Dalton, but I think the Kings slam the door shut on this and say, no, we're not doing this unless you also throw in the 18th overall pick. And in that case, I think I would do it. I mean, Buddy Hield is an elite three-point shooter. He scores almost 20 points per game. He's unhappy in Sacramento. Why not get him out of there? Get him back to, I mean, he went to Oklahoma. He's already from the Midwest. Get him back into Dallas. Get him back in the Dallas area. All of a sudden, you got shooters all around Luka Doncic. You got Seth Curry. You got Buddy Hield. You got Kristaps Porzingis. You got Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, the only downside of this lineup is your defense probably gets worse. You got to upgrade somewhere along the lines of maybe put Seth back in the six-man role and go out and get a defensive-minded two guard. And if the Mavs can do that, I think trading that 18th overall pick is more than worth it. Now, Buddy Hield is a great shooter, but I'm not sure he is the perfect piece next to Luka and KP, but I would love him on this Dallas Mavericks team. So I'm going to ask you guys to put on your thinking caps, put on your Mark Cuban Shark Tank hat, and tell me what kind, you don't have to name a specific player, but tell me what kind of player is the perfect piece next to Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis as that third guy. For me, and I was talking about it with some guys here in the office, I think a Victor Oladipo, a Drew Holiday, obviously a Bradley Beal, but a defensive guard that can also score the ball at will would be so perfect next to these two guys. Now, if you want to be keeping updated with everything the Dallas Mavericks do in the offseason and when we get back to the regular season and with the draft and via trade, no matter what, no matter when, we're going to have it on All Things Mavs. We've got over 6,000 subscribers there. I'm trying to hit 7,000 very, very soon. So go to youtube.com/allthingsmavs. The link will be in the description below. All you got to do is go over there and hit subscribe. Now let's talk about the New York Knicks, and this is a different kind of first-round trade. They're not going to be looking to trade out. They're going to be looking to trade up. They have the 8th overall pick, the 27th and 38th. They actually moved down in the draft lottery, and they were very disappointed because all their sights are set on LaMelo Ball, him becoming a member of the New York Knicks and playing in Madison Square Garden. However, I've read multiple reports that say the Knicks do want to move up, but they do not want to give away anyone like Mitchell Robinson, like R.J. Barrett. They're not even really trying to give away Kevin Knox to move up in the draft. Now, you look at the top 10, and within the top 5, you got the Timberwolves, you got the Warriors, you got the Hornets, the Bulls, and the Cavs. And I think the Warriors in this top 5 is the team that's most likely that would be willing to trade down and kind of out of that top 2. So maybe they call up Golden State and they say, hey, we'll give you maybe number 8, and maybe we'll give you like a Frank Ntilikina or a Dennis Smith Jr., someone you can work on, someone that's a project, so we can move up and get LaMelo. Because right now you got the Hawks, the Pistons, the Knicks, the Wizards, and the Suns all in that 6 to 10 range. And I think a team like the Pistons would definitely take LaMelo Ball before he can fall to New York at number 8. Now, the top 5 point guards on my big board, it's LaMelo Ball by a long shot. I've got him as the number 1 overall point guard and the number 2 overall player, followed by Killian Hayes out of France. And if the Knicks can get Killian Hayes, great. Just stay at 8. But I don't think they're going to get Killian Hayes. I think he's gone before 8 rolls around. Cole Anthony, I have him projected falling right at that 8th overall pick. I think they could stay there and still land a guy like him. And let's say they don't get any of those first 3. Tyrese are both really good options as well as my number 4 and number 5 point guard. But let's say they move up. Let's say they package that 8th overall pick and that late 20 overall pick, and they get LaMelo Ball. I think the Warriors might say, hey, we'll give you 2. Just give us the rest of your picks because they have 3 other picks. I think they could do that. And if they do that, you take LaMelo Ball without thinking. You take him like that. And you have LaMelo Ball and R.J. Barrett in the backcourt. I am still a believer in Kevin Knox's offensive game. I think it's going to come around in what would be his 3rd year in the NBA. Then you got Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle as well. And the Knicks finally have something they can build around. Now I'm going to ask you guys this question. This isn't a who do you want? Because I think it's pretty obvious who the best of these 3 is, and it's LaMelo Ball. I'm asking you to predict which one will be a New York Knick come draft night. LaMelo Ball, type LB. Cole Anthony, type CA. Killian Hayes, type KH. Or if you think it's going to be someone totally different, maybe not even a point guard at all, I want you to scroll down to the comments section and shout it out below. Now let's go to the Sacramento Kings. Much like the New York Knicks, I think this is a team that doesn't want to trade out of the draft, doesn't want to trade out of the first round, but they want to use their picks to move up in the draft because the Kings have a lot of picks. Like the Boston Celtics, they have 4 in 2020, but only one of them's in the first round. But you have number 12, you got number 35, you got number 43, and you got number 52. Now, the Kings were hoping to get something better than 12, but they just didn't move up. But I think they could package those to move up in the lottery a little bit higher. Maybe get out of the double digits, get into the single-digit range. And the Kings' new management and front office has made it very obvious. They are willing to move anyone and everyone to build this team from the bottom up. Now, you look at the draft history for the Kings, and it's just not that good. Now, Marvin Bagley at number 2, I agreed at the time that was a good pick, but looking back on it, they took Bagley over Jaren Jackson Jr., Trae Young, and there's one other guy. Luka Doncic is the guy they drafted Marvin Bagley over. Now, De'Aaron Fox at 5 back in 2017, that was a great pick. Then they picked Marquise Chris in 2016, who they actually ended up trading anyway on draft night to Phoenix for Bogdan Bogdanovic, so that kind of worked out. They took Willie Cauley-Stein in 2015 at 6th overall. They picked him over guys like Devin Booker, Miles Turner, and even Kelly Oubre would have been a better pick than Cauley-Stein that year. And then 2014, you're probably thinking, Jimmy, is that your brother at the end? No, that's Nick Stauskas, who they took 8th overall in 2014. And yeah, that was a pretty weak draft, but there were still guys available like Zach LaVine, Yusuf Nurkic, Clint Capella. Bogdanovic was actually the guy that was drafted that year. And then even Nikola Jokic was drafted, but he was a second-round pick. Not many people thought he was going to be available anyway or be as good as he is. Now, right now, the Kings are rolling with a lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Bogdanovic, who's actually a restricted free agent, Harrison Barnes will be there for a little while longer. Rashawn Holmes is their starting center, and then Marvin Bagley. And again, I think any of these guys, besides De'Aaron Fox, and probably Bagley as well, could be on the move. Now, when I talk about guys that are likely on the move, you got Bogdanovic. He's a restricted free agent. I think the Kings are willing to let him walk for the right price. Harry Giles is an unrestricted free agent who just has not panned out in the NBA. Kent Bazemore is a veteran that they probably won't look to bring back. Yogi Ferrell is a guy who just hasn't been successful in Sacramento. And then Buddy Hield is a guy who many people speculate will be traded for either more draft picks or a starting level center. But one of the reasons the Kings really need to move up is because they need to look to get a big man to replace Rashawn Holmes in the middle. And if they can get up into the top 5, maybe even the top 8 range, they could land one of the 2 best big men in the draft. Now, through their first 3 games, and again, James Wiseman only played 3 games in college, so I wanted to make it an even playing field because a lot of you think I'm an idiot for having Onyeka Okongwu above him, but you stack the numbers up side by side through their first 3 games, and it's very, very similar. And Okongwu did it all college long at USC. 17 points per game for Onyeka and 19 for James Wiseman. Each of them averaged about 10 rebounds and 3 blocked shots. Their field goal percentage was very, very similar, although Onyeka tried to stretch the floor a little bit more. Both just 19 years old. And I have Onyeka Okongwu as my best big man in the draft. So you're at the very end of this video. I want to ask you, which one is the better big man in the draft? I think they are both 1 and 2. And I do think it's pretty close. I'm not a hater of James Wiseman. I think he's going to be a good player. But I like what I saw out of Onyeka Okongwu at USC. So you guys can let me know in the comment section. If you think James Wiseman's better and you disagree, type J. If you think Onyeka Okongwu is better, type O in the comment section.